So today we are going to be looking at some confidence building around being able to touch your dog's collar. Now, dogs will generally struggle with this if they've maybe not been used to wearing a collar, or if they've had a bad experience while wearing a collar. So if someone has pulled them around by it and caused them some kind of pain or discomfort. So what I notice, particularly with anxious dogs, is that a lot more dogs than we think actually struggle with having their collar touched and grabbed. And so it's a really good thing to work on with your dog if you notice any of these signs, or if it's something more obvious that your dog struggles with. Because obviously you want to be able to grab your dog's collar in situations where you might need to restrain them for safety, and obviously for getting their lead on and off if you're clipping it to a collar. But just a useful thing to have anyway. So just to start with, I'd like to point out a few signs that you're going to want to look for when training this with your dog, to spot if they are feeling uncomfortable or a bit worried by having their collar touched or the steps leading up to that. So some dogs will be really obvious with the signs that they show that they're uncomfortable, such as growling or snapping or moving away. But some dogs will show much lower level signs that they're feeling worried that can go missed if you don't know what you're looking for. So signs to look for would be lip licks, so that tongue coming out and licking the nose, yawning, turning their head away or towards your hand, obviously moving their body away would be quite an obvious one. So yeah, I can pop a link to an infographic of other signs that you can look out for, just that might indicate that your dog is feeling a little bit worried by having their collar grabbed, in which case you would want to follow these steps. Now, in training this with Max, I'm going to start from the very beginning, just for anyone who is having to start from the really, really early stages. So what we're going to do is start with zero contact with your dog. So you're going to move your hand towards your dog's collar, not all the way making contact with it. You're going to move your hand towards the dog's collar. You're going to say good or yes, or some sort of word to signal to the dog that that was good, you're going to get a piece of food now. And then you're going to feed the dog and repeat until they are comfortable with that stage. Okay, so good. So Max was looking at my hand, which could have been a sign that he was a bit uncomfortable with my hand moving towards him. I think in this situation it's quite likely that he was just looking for a treat, but I wanted to be sure, so I moved my hand away and then tried again. He was then very aware that that hand wasn't going to do anything, and so he focused on the food that I had instead. Yes. Nice. So Max is obviously comfortable with my hand moving towards him. He hasn't shown any signs that he's worried, so I can now move on to the next step. The next step that I'm going to want to do is to touch the collar very lightly for 1 second with the back of my hand. Now, the reason I'm doing it with the back of my hand is so that the dog doesn't feel that I'm going to grab their collar, which could be worrying for some dogs, but it's just making that first bit of contact and building their confidence with that. So exactly the same, I'm going to touch his collar, I'm going to say good or yes, and then I'm going to give him a piece of food. Good. Good. And now I would look to build up the time that I'm able to do that for. Good. So Max is obviously okay with this stage, so what I'm going to do now is switch my hand around and touch him with the palm side of my hand with my fingers. Again, I'm going to start with just a really brief period of time and then build up from there. Good. 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 Okay, So now that he can do really brief periods of time, what I want to do is start actually grabbing his collar. I'm not going to move it, I'm just going to hold onto it really lightly. Now, as long as I'm holding his collar, I'm going to continuously feed him food so that grabbing means nice things happen, and when I let go, the food stops. This is going to create a positive association with having his collar grabbed because it predicts that he's going to get nice things, food. And I let go and the food stops. And I let go and the food stops. Then I want to build it up so that I can move the collar around a little bit. This is going to be useful for when you are clipping your tag or your lead or something on, or if you're trying to get the collar on and off, because obviously you're going to have to be manipulating the collar more than just lightly touching it. But I'm going to do exactly the same thing, so while I'm moving it around, I'm just going to be continuously feeding him treats. When I let go, the food stops. So again, Max is okay with this stage, so I'm going to move on, and I'm actually going to put a bit of tension onto that collar. This is going to replicate what would happen if you were holding your dog sort of back from something with their collar, or if you needed to manoeuvre them with it. So again, I'm going to add that tension, and I'm going to continuously feed him. Now, I'm not causing him any pain or discomfort here, it's just so that he can feel the pressure of his collar on his neck, and it be a positive thing rather than a negative thing. Now, I would never pull your dog around with their collar, it's just a way to quickly grab them if you need to, or obviously if you're trying to clip their lead on, you would want to grab it so you could then be able to clip that lead on. And you could also move on to the step of being able to move your dog by their collar, and also that be a positive thing, but we won't worry about that too much today. So just to recap, you're starting from moving towards, good, and feed. You're then going to add touch with the back, touch with the front, grabbing, moving it around, and then a little bit of tension, all while associating it with a nice piece of food so that your dog thinks of it as a positive thing rather than a negative one. Now, obviously I've moved very quickly through the steps with Max today because he's pretty comfortable with having his collar touched. We've done a lot of cooperative care things, so he's pretty happy and comfortable with it. But if your dog struggles with this, it is going to take them a lot longer. So you might have to spend a few days even just on step one, and that's absolutely fine. I want you to move at your dog's pace. Now, if you do notice any of those signs of anxiety, any signs that they're worried that we spoke about in the beginning, you're going to want to stop your training for that time. And next time you're just going to make it a little bit easier for them because it's just a sign that they're feeling uncomfortable. And because we're confidence building, we want the dog to feel safe and happy whenever they're training this. Now, when you are training this, I would only do sort of 5-minute sessions, maybe between 3 and 5 times throughout the day if you can. Perfect times to train are when you're waiting for the kettle to boil, or you're waiting for your dinner to cook, there's an advert on TV, just little 5-minute periods that you can fit in throughout the day is going to make a big difference to building your dog's confidence with having their collar touched.